Ryan Murphy with WRAL, joined by Tim Donnelly with 99.9 The Fan. And Tim, obviously, huge times here in college football. We're still trying to determine a national champion, and we have incredible player movement happening all over the sport. The transfer portal has taken on a life of its own over those last few years. But this year's a little bit different. What's different about this year that has maybe sped up all this action?
Well, it's the money. I mean, the money just keeps growing and growing and growing. It's kind of funny. In setting up this interview, all right, that we get the little list of topics and that Jalen sent over, and he helped set this up. So shout out to Jalen. But one of them was, discuss the new rules and how they're impacting. My first reaction was, "What rules are you talking about? There are no rules, right? It's almost like coaches would much rather cross the line and then go, oh, my bad. All right, fine. Well, we'll go back. We'll go back rather than even ask what the rules are. So, who's paying the money is changing, right? Obviously, revenue share has happened recently where schools can pay. But I'm always curious, right? These numbers we get, is it all revenue share? Is it revenue share and NIL? Is it endorsement that they promised to get you? It's a really confusing way to go through college sports because absolutely nothing is like on Front Street, right? Absolutely nothing is super transparent. So the difference is the only thing I know is the money's getting bigger, and everything else is completely unknown.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big changes is that there isn't a second portal window. So everything has been crammed into this portal window, unlike last year when there was a portal window in December and then another portal window in April after spring practice. This is it. This is your one chance to change teams, unless barring a coaching change, I suppose. And so you got to get it right. If you don't end up with enough linebackers, you can't go back out in April and find a few more linebackers or a kicker or a quarterback, you name it. You've got to put your team together right now, and I think that's pushing a lot of this movement as well.
And so that's different from like actual rule perspective. What else is different is looking at the college football playoff. You brought it up, right? We haven't decided on our national champion yet. Um, all four teams that are still alive have transfer quarterbacks. Indiana has completely built their team, it seems, through the transfer portal. There are massive amounts of transfer portal impacts on the games that remain to be played. And because of that, sports are a copycat organization. They always have been. It's like, oh, that's the new way to do it. We should go do the same thing, right? Kurt Signetti takes over Indiana and he brings darn near the entire JMU campus with him. Now we see Matt Campbell take over Penn State and he brings darn near the entire Iowa State campus with him. And it's the more teams that have success with it, the more other teams will be forced to try it, right? Even Clemson, who was like the last holdout of we're not going to take transfers, is now like, well, if everybody else is going to do it, we're going to have to do it too. Like it's the success is driving the craziness as well.
Yeah, that stat about all four remaining teams in the semifinals all having transfer quarterbacks. I saw that yesterday. That's incredible. And the other thing I think we're seeing, Indiana has like one of the oldest teams in college football. I think we're seeing a purposely, and we've talked about this in college basketball. Duke's trying to buck the trend, but everybody else is trying to get old and stay old. I think you're seeing that in college football now. You want to get old and stay old, and that way you're not trying to win with 18-year-olds playing against 23-year-olds. You're trying to win with 23-year-olds, and I think we're seeing that all over the place. I was looking at the class Carolina's brought in, lots of juniors, lots of seniors. I think coaches are deciding that I'd rather try to win with veteran players than try to win with high school players.
And I mean, the logic is there, especially if you've built a solid roster, but there's like four holes, right? We need a corner, we need an edge rusher, and we need two interior offensive linemen. It's just easier to go find a guy that started 40 games in the CAA or that started, all last year for a group of five team that was in the mix for the CFP, and plug them in and feel more secure. I still think there's going to be quite a bit of the stars, the difference makers brought out of high school recruiting. But if you just need like a solid starter to like, hey, this position isn't going to win it for us, but we just can't have it lose it for us. Of course, you're going to go, spend even a little bit more money if you have to get a guy with like two kids and a mortgage who's ready to go out there and make it happen.
I mean, I think we saw that, we can talk about the teams in the college football playoff, but a team like Virginia, you know, really invested heavily, and you saw the turnaround that they had. Like it's working across college football. There now, obviously, UNC put a lot of money in the transfer portal last year, and it didn't work. So it's not a foolproof method, but if you nail it, like Texas Tech or Virginia, it's an instant way to turn your program around.
Let me run this by you. This is one of my working theories about college football. Um, Head coaches in college football, when I was being recruited, 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was, they still, I think the most important thing they did was like football scheme, right? And they were out looking for players who fit their scheme, and a lot of times like your recruiting visits involve like whiteboard sessions and stuff. Like you it was still very football. I think that's at least third most important thing a head coach does now. The most important thing a head coach does is identify talent, right? Because if you can grab a group of five guy with a skill set that can work in the power conference and pay them not what the going rate is for a power five starter, that's a huge advantage. And Kurt Signetti has done that very well with Indiana, just to use them as an example. And then the other thing they have to do is interact with 100 millionaires and billionaires. Like that might be the most important skill set is like how comfortable are you? How charming are you in the most exclusive country club in your state? And you almost leave the football to the coordinators, right? You almost leave the football to the position coaches because the head coach has to be calling timeouts, right? Clock management, whatever. You throw in your headset on the sideline, doing the game day coach thing. But other than that, it's like almost being a GM roster management and then being a like team president, fundraiser business guy before you even get to the football.
Yeah, it's such a complex organization now. It's not just how can I win this game on Saturday. There's so much more to it. You played quarterback at college football. Certainly, quarterback gets all the attention. I think been interesting when you look at what's happened at quarterback with the three local ACC schools. Darian Mensah, transfer from Tulane, stays at Duke. CJ Bailey, who was a high school recruit, stays at NC State. Um, Huge wins for both of those teams to get those quarterbacks back. And then at North Carolina, they decide to go in the portal. They've reportedly added two pieces out of the portal, not standouts, not guys that you've heard of before. Miles McNeil out of Texas A&M, Billy Edwards Jr., who was at Wake and then at Maryland and then at Wisconsin. And they lose Gio Lopez. I don't think Carolina fans are really crying over that. But the most interesting part to me is he goes to Wake Forest, a team that he played against this year. Wake Forest has the old South Alabama offensive coordinator, a guy that Gio obviously had a bunch of success with. When you look at quarterback at these three schools, what stands out the most to you? And what I'll ask you the Carolina question. Are they settled at quarterback? I mean, is the starter on this roster?
Okay, well, we'll tackle the non-UNC first because UNC is in a completely different group. If you have CJ Bailey and you have Darian Mensah, you're not identifying with the chaos that's going on at UNC right now. I think Duke and NC State fit in aggressively in the Atlantic Coast Conference. You and I both go to ACC kickoffs and go to all the ACC events, and their branding is the conference of quarterbacks, right? And they list all of the accolades in the NFL by former ACC quarterbacks. They count Aaron Rodgers and Jared Goff because they went to Cal, even though they're not ACC, or they weren't ACC, and that's their thing. And if you look around the ACC, they spend on quarterbacks, right? They may not have, aside from a couple, the true budgets of the giant SEC or Big Ten top of the line teams, but they'll spend on a quarterback as well as anybody. And if you look around the league, that's kind of their MO. NC State, right? Hollywood Smothers into the transfer portal, running back committed to Alabama. Terrell Anderson, wide receiver, into the transfer portal, committed to USC. Noah Rogers into the transfer portals, taking visits to Auburn and Penn State. Jacarius Peak, left tackle, into the transfer portal. What is it? It's Texas A&M, it's Alabama, it's Ole Miss. Like they kind of chose, we want our quarterback, and we'll do our best to keep everybody else outside of that, but we want our quarterback. Duke, right? Very similarly, although they've kept a few others of their big stars, but Quayshawn Brown just hit into the transfer portal, a wide receiver who's had some success. Darian Mintz is making a lot of money. So I kind of like the strategy. Like if you need your slingshot to go slay Goliath, the quarterback is probably the best one to pay. So I see them in that realm. UNC, gosh, I don't know if they're settled or not. And I always say this. I have a 4.5-year-old son. I really don't care if he wants to play sports. I just want him to do whatever he wants and to, be a good person and all that. I kind of want him to be a 5-star in some sport, just like not for the pressure on him. I just want to know what coaches tell a 5-star, right? I want to sit in the room and just hear whatever nonsense they sling. So I don't know what they've told Billy Edwards Jr., right? I don't remember last year. First, you mentioned there were two transfer windows. They took the kid from Purdue, and then the second transfer window, he left and went back to Purdue. Uh, so
Yeah, Ryan Brown.
so that's I was going to say Max Brown, but that's the quarterback from USC a bunch of years ago. It's really confusing as far as what the message is when they show up, right? Gio Lopez, he hit the portal, but he didn't hit the portal until they got the commitment from Billy Edwards Jr. So there may have been an expectation that he thought he was still the guy going into next year, and when they brought in competition, he's like, "Ooh, that's not what I signed up for. I'm leaving." So I wish I knew what they told Billy Edwards Jr. I don't know if he's expecting true competition. The quarterback, the other one they brought in was Miles O'Neill. He's more of I believe, a developmental piece. Young guy, hasn't really played. But I don't know what the expectation is for competition. But similar to what I was saying, if UNC identified something in Billy Edwards, who by the way started his career at Wake, so a little bit of a see doodle there. That was four schools ago. If they identified a starting caliber player in Billy Edwards Jr. and bring him in, and he's a good starter, that goes a long way towards making your roster significantly better, and probably for a cost that gives you more money to spend on the rest of the roster than the rest of the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, if you're enjoying this type of content, please like and subscribe down below on YouTube, and we're doing a lot more of this content across WRAL platforms, 99.9 The Fan as well. When you look at the money, and you touched on this at the beginning, I mean, we're seeing reporting already, and I wrote about this before the new year. That cap, whatever cap we were talking about, this $20 million revenue sharing was going to even out the playing field. Everybody was going to have the same pool. I mean, that didn't even last half a year. That didn't even last 6 months. We front loaded all the deals before that, so to take advantage of that. And now Lane Kiffin's promised $30 million for his roster. The way Michael Lombardi, the GM at North Carolina, talked about it is like, you're having conversations with your corporate partners saying, where's the over the cap spending you're going to give me? I've been reading a lot about Learfield deals where the multimedia rights packages are including, okay, well, you've got to come up with X, 3.5 million for our quarterback. We're going to give them 1.5 million out of our revenue share. You got to come up with 3.5 million. Are those deals going to get through the College Sports Commission, NIL Go? Is that money even legal? Is it going to get challenged in court? I mean, this system that we thought, oh, the House settlements brought all this clarity to it, has brought no clarity.
This is a can of worms that I've opened 100 times, and each time there's like a new creepy crawly thing going on in there. Uh, yeah, I'm pretty nerdy when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I was looking it up the other day. The NFL salary cap is a bit more structured. It's not like a the NHL does it the best in the world, but the NFL does have a cap, and the best quarterbacks are making a little less than a fourth percentage wise of the cap. If you if you do that for the 15 million in revenue share, 15 and a half, whatever you're allowed to spend on one sport, quarterbacks are making way over a quarter of that, right? So the money is coming from somewhere else. What's the report on Sorsby at Texas Tech getting 6 to 7 million? I don't know if that's true or not, but I can tell you 6 to 7 million is a huge chunk of change out of 15. So the money is coming from elsewhere, which then, like, again, like every question, the answer is another question that gets hairier. Why doesn't the NFL do this? Right? The most famous fan in the world is Mattress Mac, right? He's some mattress selling millionaire who bets huge amounts of money on the Astros and the Texans and all this. Why doesn't he go to CJ Stroud and say, you're going to endorse mattresses? I'll give you $10 million a year, but it's contingent upon you being in Houston. And that has nothing to do with Houston. It's outside the salary cap. That's the equivalent of what's happening in college football right now. It's people showing up, whether they have a legitimate business or not, and saying, "Here's 5 million, but I'm giving it to whoever ends up being the starting quarterback for this school. So as long as that's you, here you go. And it's a wild can of worms. I don't know how you regulate that, right? Like,
Well, you do know how you regulate it, right? You regulate it the same way the NFL regulates it, and the same way Major League Baseball regulates it, with a collective bargaining agreement. And they just not nobody's been willing to go there.
yep.
The NCAA has put all their eggs in Congress, and Congress continues to drop that basket of eggs and break them all. And so the only answer may be collective bargaining, in which you work out eligibility rules. So you're not facing a lawsuit every week about whether fifth year players can play or JUCO players can play, or guys who played in the G League can play. And you work out eligibility, you work out compensation, you work out transfer windows. Like, no, we're seeing the case with the Washington quarterback right now. Desmond Williams apparently agreed to a deal to come back to Washington. 2 days later, he says he's jumping in the portal, perhaps to go to LSU. If you have true collective bargaining, true enforcement of those rules, then you might be able to solve some of this. But no one's been willing to do that yet.
And again, there's a step to everything. I think a low key massive benefit of collective bargaining agreement is, like the NFL, like every other professional league, then the Players Association, the union, can certify agents. Because I think right now, maybe the biggest problem, or all of the biggest problems, stem from there's a lot of just complete jerks. And jerk is the wrong word. Just they don't know enough. They throw a sports coat on and they walk around advising players, and it's just bad advice. One of my former teammates is actually a NFL Players Association certified agent. He has a couple guys on practice squads, a couple guys in the Canadian Football League, and he dabbles in being an NIL agent. And I just follow him on social media. We're not super close, but half of his tweets are just like, players, if your agent tells you this, don't listen. It's not allowed. It's not smart. It's not good. Because he's competing, trying to sign clients with agents that call themselves agents. I don't even know if they're agents, and they just don't know what they're talking about. And players are making horrendous decisions because of it. And then schools are getting messed over. We're seeing. I mean, I don't even know if we have time to go into what's going on at the University of Washington, but an agent would easily, a great agent, a good agent, would easily stop a player from signing a binding contract 4 days before deciding to go into the transfer portal, because they just know the lay of the land and know, all right, hey, take some time. We don't have to sign this now. You have leverage, and all these other things.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the percentages that some of these NIL agents are taking versus what the NFL agents take, and it's absurd. Let's end with this. There's been a lot of movement, a lot of pieces coming and going. Has Duke, UNC, NC State, you pick, have any of them made some moves that you really like, that signal that they know what they're doing when it comes to team building and where they needed to get better?
First, I'll give you one of my New Year's resolutions, and I said this on my afternoon show on 99.9. Right before the end of the year, I said I'm going to do my best in 2026 not to talk bulk numbers about the portal, right? And when the portal was brand new, we got really riled up about, like, this team has 35 players in the portal, like, oh, that's the X amount percentage of their roster. And you look at it, and you're, looking back, probably 22 of them were nudged into the portal by the
Yeah.
coaching staff. 4 of them were not going to play, and like there were 6 that were like legit losses. And really, we should have just been talking about the 6. So I'm doing my best to not get dramatic about all the craziness. If you're looking at the teams, I think UNC is going to have the most splash hirings, but I think that's volume, right? They're bringing in a lot of guys, and admittedly, and actually, I think this is probably tough on the coaching staff. I can't watch film of all 400 or 4,500 people in the portal. So a lot of this is dependent upon 247 and On3, and some of the work you guys are doing at WRAL and high school OT and all these other of our colleagues. So they've brought in some guys that seem to be 3 and 4 star transfers, which are big deals. But the biggest news out of the transfer portal in the triangle this year were the tweets that confirmed Darian Mensah and CJ Bailey were staying in the triangle. I think a lot of times the best moves are picking the right guys to keep, and making sure the ones that you need stay around. Those 2 quarterbacks, I don't think it's outlandish to say they could be the 2 best quarterbacks in the ACC next year. They'll have competition for that, but if you can keep the best quarterbacks around, that's the biggest deal.
Yeah, I had a Heisman vote this year for the first time, and Darian Mensa's stats, like when I was like looking, casting a wide net, who should I even be considering? I mean, his stats were right there with the guys at the top of the list. And that's in his first year in this system. Be interesting to see what he does. The loss of Jacarius Peak and some of those skill position players, Hollywood Smothers, a couple of the wide receivers. I feel like skill guys, particularly running backs, you can find. Duke Scott did a great job, filling in for Hollywood Smothers already. Does the loss of Peak or the loss of any of those skill guys give you any pause about what could be setting up as kind of a dream season for NC State? You look at that schedule, you look at CJ Bailey, you look at the momentum they had at the end of the season, you say, this schedule is really, really manageable.
I was just talking with Mike Lennon. I host a Pack Therapy podcast with him. He jumps on my show, and we were talking state portal, and I brought up the four names that everybody are talking about as the big departures: Smothers, Rogers, Anderson, and Peak. And I was like, what do you think of when you hear those names leaving? And he went, Jacarius Peak is leaving, like just right there. Partially because their offense was not number one wide receiver driven last year, right? On game to game basis. And it could have been Joe Lee, it could have been Hoffman, it could have been Jackson, it could have been Rogers, it could have been Anderson. Like they had different players step up. So you can continue that with, kind of, it's not like you're replacing a 1,200-yard receiver, you're replacing some 600-yard receivers. Left tackles though, right? We all watched the blind side. It's important. Now they did get a commit from an ECU kid, McCrimmon. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Did watch a little bit. He actually didn't play great against NC State last year, which goes against the cliche of like if a receiver catches 150 yards against a team and doesn't have more than 40 in any other game, the team he had 150 yards against is going to get him out of the portal.
Right.
So he didn't play great
Carolina
against
signed
NC
a
State.
Richmond linebacker.
Exactly. Um, so it goes against that a little bit, which maybe he closed well last 8 games, played much better. So perhaps they have the replacement there, but no, Peak is, as far as departures go from the triangle, I would put him, you know, I, excluding guys that just exhausted their eligibility and don't have a choice, or guys going pro, because like Brian O'Neill, similarly, right, great left tackle for Duke, but he's just going pro. You're never going to fight that. Peak would be the one that really stands out to me, and they have to get that settled, regardless of who their receivers are. If CJ Bailey's on his back, he's not going to be able to find him downfield.
He's Tim Donnelly with 99.9 The Fan. Listen to him every weekday, 3 to 6, covering the Panthers and the Hurricanes and all this college football as well as college basketball. Doing a great job over there. I'm Brian Murphy with WRAL. We appreciate you listening. Find us here on YouTube all the time. More and more content being produced every day. We'll a lot of time to talk about how these transfers are going to fit in as we get into spring ball and move forward. Spring portal or the winter portal closes. The only portal closes on January 16th. So still a little more than a week to go. We might still see some big moves coming.
And I appreciate the time, Brian. I'll do this all day. I'll talk about the portal. Like we've got months of it to get it done, and I'll have no problem filling that space. And everybody follow everything Brian does on WRAL. I have a little tab on my computer set to WRAL Sports just so I can stay up on it, and you should too.
Appreciate that, Tim. We'll talk soon and have a great day.